This conference will now be recorded.
Hi all, this is Chandra. So welcome to the day one session on performance testing real-time project with JMeter. So yesterday we had the demo session in which we went through the course curriculum and I explained you like for each of the course curriculum items which we have designed, what all different topics we will cover, and we also had the query clarification, right? So today we will go into the first topic, that is the performance testing life cycle, right? So in order to understand the performance testing life cycle, we have to go through the different activities of the performance testing life cycle. So let me share my screen. So Mahesh, if you can please go on mute. Okay. So let me share my screen. So whenever you have any queries, please unmute yourself and you can ask the queries. And in case there are no queries, I request you to kindly be on mute so that we do not disturb the meeting. Thank you. I hope my screen is visible to all of you. Yeah.
Yes, Chandra. Yes.
So before going to the performance testing life cycle, okay, I want to show some pointers to you, like day of exam results publication. Okay, so whenever we have given in exams during our school days, college days, we used to give a lot of exams, right? And we are eagerly waiting for the day when the results will be published. So on the day of the results publication, okay, we are very eager to see our results. Then Tatkal ticket booking. So whenever we have to go to any place on an urgent basis, we opt for Tatkal tickets, right? In India. Now everyone knows that what is the problem with Tatkal ticket booking, because so many users would be trying to access the website of Indian Railways or IRCTC to book the Tatkal tickets. Then the next point which I wanted to show is Flipkart's first big billion day sale. So Flipkart is a retail e-commerce application. So its first big billion day sale, right? It introduced, like we have Black Fridays in Western countries. Flipkart introduced the sale concept known as Big Billion Day, and I'm referring to the first Big Billion Day. Okay. So now looking at these points, looking at these pointers, what do I think? Where do they point me to? They point me to the performance, right? On the day of the result, the websites are slow. They do not open. The servers do not respond. Similarly, for the Tatkal, whenever you access any the Indian Railways website at other hours, you will have a good user experience. But during Tatkal ticket, you will experience slowness. Similarly, then in the Flipkart's first big billion day sale, it was a flop because of performance issues associated with that. Clear, all of you? Then two more pointers. Whatever infrastructure which is going to production, whenever my application goes live, the application will be deployed on servers, and servers means infrastructure. So whatever infrastructure has been designed by our solution architects or in our projects, will that infrastructure work fine in production, or if there will be any performance issues experienced in production? Okay. Next point is, if there is an earthquake, that is a natural calamity, right? It is not in anyone's control. So if there is an earthquake, how will the operations take place in a data center? So data center is nothing but where the servers are located, right? So how the data center will operate when any earthquake happens. These are some more pointers. Next, can my application be hacked? Whatever application has been developed in my project, can that be hacked? Has there been a data security breach on my application? Okay. Is there any malware present or introduced in my network which will impact my application? So these are some other pointers, okay, referring to something. Then some more pointers. Will the application, whatever has been developed, whatever has been performance tested by me, will that be compatible with different browsers? Now, whenever any application is used by users, you cannot ask them that you need to open this application in any one browser. In that case, you will lose your customer. You cannot force anyone to use a particular browser, right? So the free hand should be given to the customers to use the application on their choice of the browser. So that I have to verify whether my application will be compatible with different browsers. Now, whatever application has been developed in my project, whatever application has been performance tested by me, can that application be accessed by differently abled or specially abled or physically challenged persons? Okay, I do not want to use the physically challenged word, rather specially abled or differently abled. Okay, so these are different points, different pointers which point me to different types of testing. And all these categories of testing are, types of non-functional testing. Here I'm not doing any functional testing, right? Whether I'm checking, if I'm checking that if any functionality is working fine, if I'm able to log into the application, if I'm able to place a order, if I'm able to search any flight, those are functionalities. But whatever pointers I have mentioned over here, I'm not testing any functionality. So these all are different aspects of non-functional testing. Remember guys, non-functional testing is a superset and it has different categories of tests, and these pointers refer to those kind of different tests. Clear? So these pointers refer to those kind of different tests. Now what are those different types of non-functional tests? Okay, that I'm going to explain. What are the different types of non-functional testing? First is performance testing. Very much, you all are aware that what is performance testing and all, right? Then this is a new one. I'm not sure if any of you is aware. Operational acceptance testing. The pointers which I had told you, whatever infrastructure is there, whether that is going to work in production or not. Okay. Then in case there is an earthquake, will I be able to operate normally in my data center? So these are different categories of operational acceptance test. Okay. Then we have security testing. The points which I told: application hacking, data breach, malware. So in that particular thing, we do the security testing. We try to validate whether my application is secure enough to be operated in production. Clear all of you? Then whether my application will be compatible with different type of browsers, guys. Whether my application will be compatible with different type of browsers. So that is browser compatibility testing. Okay, that is browser compatibility testing. Then accessibility testing. Whether my application will be accessible, can be used by differently abled person. Okay. That is my accessibility testing. Clear all of you? I'll take a pause here. Any queries, guys?
Browser compatibility also part of functional testing, right? Because
No, it is part in browser compatibility testing. You are not verifying the functionality. Rather, you are verifying the UI elements, right? In browser compatibility, you are just checking whether your application UI, the GUI, is compatible with different browsers. How is the look and feel on different browsers? If it is giving a comfortable view um, to the users on different browsers. Is that fine, all of you? Clear, all of you? Okay. So any queries, guys? I'll take a pause here. Any queries, anyone till now? So I wanted to give you an overview. See, don't get confused when people ask you about non-functional testing. So these are the different categories of non-functional testing which cater to the IT industry. And we are going to specifically discuss about performance testing and from an aspect of a real-time project. That too using JMeter. Clear, all of you? So now I'll come to performance testing. So in performance testing, what is our objective, guys? What is our objective? We check the speed, means how fast my application is responding, right? Speed, how fast my application is going to respond, that I am going to validate. Then scalability, right? Whether my application is scalable, means whether it can cater to the increased volumes. Now that volume can be number of users, that volume can be number of hits, that volume can be the amount of data. Clear, all of you? So the increased volume can be an increase or a rise in any of the parameters. So over there I am verifying whether my application is scalable enough to cater to those. Clear? Scalability, speed and reliability as well. Whether my application is reliable enough for the users so that it will be able to give, you know, desired performance over the time. Clear, all of you? Reliability also needs to be there. For example, my application is very much, fast. It is having a good response time, but over the time when I'm using that application, if that application is not going to respond, it happens, guys. You will see during performance testing also we have observed that if we continuously do the performance test, or if there is an increase in the data and all, my application doesn't respond. So in that case the application is not reliable, right? So not only speed matters, scalability matters, reliability matters. So these three things are very important from a performance testing aspect: speed, scalability and reliability. Clear, all of you? Now the objective of performance testing I have explained you. Now how do we measure that? There are different approaches, different things. Now in order to do this performance testing, we have different phases. Clear, all of you? Or we call it as the performance testing life cycle. We call it as the performance testing life cycle. So there are different phases. So the first phase, if you can see on the screen, is the requirement gathering. As the name suggests, we are gathering requirements. Now yesterday I was telling you the requirements can be of two types: functional and non-functional. Clear? So non-functional is my non-functional requirement, or NFRs. We normally call it as NFRs. Now remember this, guys. Whenever you get the non-functional requirements, you will not only get for performance testing, you will get for other aspects also, which I told you. That is why I gave you the overview of non-functional testing first. Very few people will tell you about this. NFRs are not only about performance testing, but they are also about other aspects of non-functional testing like operational acceptance testing, security testing, browser compatibility, accessibility. But as a performance testing team, those NFRs will not be in your scope. Clear, all of you? The OAT, the browser compatibility, the accessibility, the security NFRs, they will not be in your scope. So you need to be very much mindful. You have to put them out of scope. Clear, all of you? So there will be a different team who will do that. Now in some projects also what happens, they expect the performance testing team to do the operational acceptance testing also. But if we do not have that capability, it's better to say that no, it is out of scope for us. But if you are aware of the operational acceptance tests, you can take up that as well to increase the business for your organization. But anyways, remember, the NFRs will be for the different types of non-functional tests. Out of the total list of NFRs, there will be the NFRs which are specific to performance testing. Now in the requirement gathering phase, we are going to gather those non-functional requirements which are specific to performance testing. Next phase, guys, test plan and design. So we have got the requirements, the non-functional requirements. Then in that non-functional requirement gathering phase, what all different activities we do, I will explain in the future slides. However, just assume that you have done the gathering of the requirements. Okay, you have the final list of NFRs. You have the final list of business scenarios which will be in scope of performance testing. So your next activity or next phase is my test plan and design. So in this, you have to plan your test, right? You have to do the planning. Now, as there is a saying, if we do not plan our work, we'll never be able to complete it. Because if we do not have a plan, our work will be directionless, will not be going in a particular direction. So test planning is very much important because it will help us in meeting the timelines of the project, as well as we'll have the traceability. Whatever things we are testing, whether we have the complete coverage or not, whether we have tested all the things which were required or not, that thing we can get to know. So in the test plan and design phase, there are again different activities which we will do, which I'll explain in details. Next phase, test execution. In test execution, so just assume we have done all the test planning thing. We have developed our test scripts as part of test design. We have created the test data and all. Our environment is set up. Okay. So then in that case, we'll go to the test execution. In test execution, we will conduct different types of tests: load test, stress test, endurance test, breakpoint tests, etc. Right? So basically test execution, as the name suggests, will do the test execution. Now again, in test execution also, there are different activities which are required to be completed, guys. Clear, all of you? In test execution, there are different activities which are required to be completed. So we will go through those activities in details as well. Next phase, test results analysis. Now you have done the execution. From those execution, you will get the test results. Now there is some objective, right? We are doing the test execution to verify the NFRs. Now, how can we verify whether the NFRs have been met or not? We have to analyze the test results and then come up with our observations. Clear all of you? Then only we'll come to know whether our tests have met the NFRs or not. Clear all of you? So that is why the test result analysis is very important. We need to dedicate good amount of time, guys. What happens, the time which is actually spent in test result analysis is very much squeezed. People do not give importance to that because everything will get right shifted in a project on the ground in reality. Okay, everything will get right shifted. As a result, you will get very less time for test result analysis, but you should be very much cautious. You should plan your activities such that in your timeline, in your plan, you clearly specify the required number of days, required number of hours to do the test result analysis. Clear all of you? So that is the, and then in the test result analysis also there are different things which we will do. So we'll go through that. Next phase, test reporting and sign off. So once all these things are done, we will do the test reporting and sign off. Any queries, anyone? Any queries? Now this requirement,
Just a query. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah,
no problem.
so while discussing these, say, requirement gathering or test plan per se, are we also going to discuss about the roles of a non-functional tester versus a functional tester, like for or the overlap? When is that overlap going to happen between a functional team and a non-functional team?
So if I understood your question correctly, so ideally, the project is very much mature now. Okay, so they clearly
Mhm.
understand what is the role of a functional tester and what is the role of a non-functional tester. And I would say
Right.
if anyone asks you, guys, you do the performance testing as well as you execute some of my functional test cases. So see
Right.
that should be a clear no from your side because functional testing is completely different. You have to think of different negative scenarios as well to do the performance testing, and then in that we have different methods, different approaches, like one of them is boundary value analysis and all, right? So functional testing is completely different. In performance testing we do not do negative scenarios. We always
No,
test.
that part I understood. Okay. My question was, see, when we talk about a software development life cycle,
Yeah.
then in that life cycle, when does the requirement gathering for non-functional testing come into picture?
Yes, whenever you are getting the requirements, whenever the testing team, I would say, because you will be part of the testing team, right? In general, whenever the
Hmm.
testing team is getting the requirements, the ask of the test manager or the test lead should be that all the functional requirements as well as the non-functional requirements should be provided so that the team can be involved early in the development life cycle. They can assess the requirements, they can analyze that, and they can do some early performance testing as well. Nowadays, the ask is that we do an early performance testing because what the problem is, your product is completely developed, it is functionally working fine, and then you do the performance testing, and for developing, for testing, good amount of time has been already spent. Then you are being asked to do the performance testing and you identify critical bottlenecks. Just listen what terms I'm using. I'm not using critical issue, rather critical bottlenecks. Because in performance testing, we need to use bottleneck. Okay. So you identify critical bottlenecks. Now, in those critical bottlenecks, with those critical bottlenecks, you cannot have the application go live. So what happens there? The development team has to again put efforts, and your time to market is increased. Your go live date will get shifted, and plus that again the functional testing team also has to spend the efforts. So the ask is that we do early performance testing. You give us the requirements. We will come up with a plan how we can do a component level performance testing so that we can identify the performance test defects earlier and communicate to you. So your ask should be that give us the NFRs also right from the beginning. Okay.
Sure. Thanks.
No problem. Any other queries? Anyone? Okay. So, like overview is like requirement gathering. We understand the application. We should try to get the finalized and approved NFRs. We should have the scope identified as well. Okay. So that we can plan accordingly. Then in the test plan and design, we'll prepare the test plan, finalize the workload model, test script design, setup and validation of the test environment. Then in the test execution, test data setup, dry run of test scripts, test execution as per our scope, server monitoring. So we'll go into those different activities in details now. So before going to the different phases, let me give you some examples of NFRs, because some people, many people do not know. Like yesterday, some people were asking that the customer might not know what is an NFR. So as performance test consultants, our role, our job is to educate the customer also that the NFRs should be written in such manners. Now some examples are like response time of different application screens should be less than 2 seconds. The application should be able to handle at least 1000 transactions per second, or basically my throughput. The application shall support 2000 concurrent users. So I have given three different NF requirements from three different perspectives, like response time, throughput or TPS, and user load, right? So basically your performance testing will revolve around these parameters. That is why I have identified those. We do our workload design modeling with those parameters and all. I'll explain that clearly. So these are the different examples of NFRs. But yes, we will look into the NFRs more in more details, okay, which will help you to understand it more clearly. Okay, so we'll go to the requirement gathering phase. Okay, so what is requirement gathering? As I told you, we are gathering or collecting our requirements. Now because we belong to the performance testing team, we are interested in the non-functional requirements. Okay, functional requirements, it is good to understand the functional requirements, but we should not completely dive into it, or we should not spend more time on that, because for us, whatever scope or whatever business scenarios is identified for performance testing, if we understand the dependencies around those scenarios, like what is the user flow, what is the test data requirement, okay, so if those things we understand, then that should be sufficient for us. You do not need to understand the application in details, like positive scenario, negative scenario, blah blah blah. Clear, all of you? So our first objective is application understanding. Okay, application understanding. Now as I told you, your objective should not be to understand the application like a functional tester, guys. Your objective should be to understand as much as the scope of performance testing is, so that you have an understanding of those scenarios, that how that particular user flow will happen on the application, how the end user is going to perform that transaction on the application. You need to know that. Now this is on the front end, right? On the front end, whatever the user is going to perform. Now from a non-functional testing or from a performance testing perspective, we also need to understand what are the backend components involved. For example, when I am launching the application, in the backend, what calls are being made, what services are being called, we need to know that. Clear? Similarly, login. So when I do the login, what is happening? Which all different components in my application architecture are interacting with each other? Clear? So that you will be able to identify during your execution in which particular component I am getting a higher response time, because your total response time will be the sum of the time spent in each of those components, right, in processing by those components. So you need to know, if again, if you want to give that much of detailed information to the different stakeholders. Clear, all of you? So that is why you need to understand the application functionality as well as the different backend components which are involved, okay, in the application, so that okay, over here these are the services, these are the elements or components which will be used, and you can ask the development team or the business analyst or the architecture team what are the NFRs around those as well. If you feel that we should measure those as well, you should ask for those details also. Then the scope identification. So all the test cases which will be executed by a functional testing team, all of them are not going to be performance tested. Remember this, guys. All the test cases, whatever will be executed by the functional testing team, they are not going to be part of performance testing. Okay, they do the positive scenarios, they do the negative scenarios, but all of them will not be in our scope. So it is very much critical, it is very much important that we identify the scope for performance testing. Okay, we identify the scope for performance testing. Now how will you identify the scope? You need to discuss with different stakeholders. So your stakeholders for scope identification should be the business user and the business analyst. They are the ones with whom you will talk, but again they might not be aware of the details, so they will again go to the other stakeholders like the architecture team. And if you want, you can also go and discuss with the architecture team, because the solution architect will know that which is a hotspot or in which component he is expecting an issue. Clear, all of you? Because based on his design, he will have a he will have an idea in his brain or in his mind that yes, this particular component could be a bottleneck or it could give rise to issues. So it is also important that you discuss with the architecture team or the solution architect that what all scope means. See, you will get the scope from the business users and business analysts. You go and you take that, get it reviewed with the architecture team also, so that and you get a buy-in from them or approval from them, so that that yes, you have reviewed those scenarios with the solution architect as well, and they have also agreed that that much of scope is fine. And remember always, you should have an approved and finalized list of scenarios from the customer, because based on that only you will come up with your test plan, test strategy. Now later in the project, if they change that, you will have to put in additional efforts, right? You might have to change your test plan. So it is very much important that we identify the scope by discussing with the different stakeholders, business users, solution architect, business analyst for performance testing. Okay, so scope identification is very important. Next, as I was telling you, scope identification is important But how will you identify which all scenarios should be in scope for performance testing? Now you went to your stakeholders, the business users, the business analysts, they will tell you, no, I am not sure. Let's say there is a application which is going to production for the first time. So they will say, they will say, literally, I would like that all the scenarios will be performance tested. Now, is it really possible that you do the performance testing of all the scenarios? No, right? So over there, you have to play the role of a performance test consultant. You have to educate them that which all scenarios should be in scope of performance testing. Now there are different criterias, okay? Different criterias are there based on which any scenario should be in scope or should be out of scope of performance testing. So you will get a question in the interview that how do you determine which scenarios should be in scope of performance testing? Or if we use more better terms, which scenarios should be performance test candidates or which scenarios should be candidates for performance testing? Here all of you. So in that case, your answer should be, what should be the answer? The scenarios which are frequently used. People say 80-20 rule, right? So in an application, it could be the case that only 30 to 40% of the application is regularly used by the end users. Remaining 60% is not used. Okay, that could be a situation. So in that case, there's no point in going and testing or doing the performance test of the entire application. So whatever scenarios I think that they will be frequently used, or it should not be you who will think, it should be the business users, okay, because they will have an idea which scenarios or which applications are going to be frequently used. Also based on your experience of different projects, you can also say that okay, these all different scenarios could be used by the end users. Now because we also use different applications in our daily life, right? So we know, like for example, frequently asked questions, people hardly go to that section, right? Contact us, people hardly go to that section. So we also have an idea that which all modules will be frequently used. So first criteria is that the frequently used modules, the frequently used scenarios are candidates for performance testing. Next, mission critical. The scenarios which are mission critical are candidates for performance testing. Now, what do you mean by mission critical, guys? It means if that scenario is not working, okay, if that scenario is not working, it will completely block the other functionalities, or it will block the other functionalities of the application, or other functionalities will not work correctly. Or it could be also that whichever scenarios are very much important for the business, okay, whichever scenarios are very much important for the business. So these are the different applications or scenarios which will be called as mission critical. Okay, mission critical. Okay, those scenarios are critical for our mission. Our mission is that the application should work fine with good response time, with scalability capability and reliability, right? So we need to ensure properly that which all scenarios will be candidate for performance testing, and we should identify them with the help of business users, business analysts, solution architect. And then what are you going to do? You should get them finalized and approved, so that you are always working on a finalized list. If there are changes in the future, then there will be more efforts required. Okay. So your objective should be that you have the finalized list of NFRs. Now, whatever scope you identified, whatever scenarios have been identified for performance testing, based on the NFRs, you have to test them. So, not only the scenarios, not only the user flows, not only the business flows, or not only the scope, but also the NFRs should be, finalized and approved. Because based on those NFRs only, you will design your test plan, you will proceed with your test activities. Now, let's say, I'll give you an example that you have been told that initially you have been told that the expected response time is 5 seconds. Now you tested the application and you got the response time as 4 seconds. Okay, you got the response time as 4 seconds, which is less than the SLA of 5 seconds. Which is less than the SLA of 5 seconds. So that is a pass, right? That is a pass from our end. But let's say in the future, the customer is changing the NFR that the response time should be less than 3 seconds. Now that is a problem for you, right? Because you earlier had the information that the expected response time is less than 5 seconds. You tested, you got the response time of 4 seconds. So you did not highlight any risk, you did not highlight any issue. But now that they have changed it to 3 seconds, so your test will now be a failed status, right? Your NFRs have failed because you have got the response time of 4 seconds. So in that case, you have to again put your efforts, you have to again rework, right? So in order to avoid those, you should always ask for finalized version of the NFRs. Okay. Now in the NFRs, so in the NFRs, we have an activity known as the static testing of NFRs. Now many people in the industry, they're not aware what is static testing. Okay, hardly any performance testing guys do this part, right, guys? So what is static testing? Static testing in as per ISTQB, it is like you are reviewing a document. You are reviewing a document and identifying the issues. Remember, guys, you are not checking any functionality. You are not doing any performance testing. Rather, you are going through or reviewing any document which is provided to you as requirements, and then you are doing you are reviewing that, you are seeing if there are any issues or if there are any ambiguities, if there are any gaps in those requirements, and you are identifying them and highlighting them to the proper stakeholders. So that is my static testing, guys. Remember. So what will you do? You will have the list of NFRs. You will go through each and every NFR. You have understood the scope. You have understood the application. You have understood what you have to test. So you will go through those NFRs and check if any information is missing, if the number of users have been given or not, if the response time for different transactions have been given or not, if the throughput is given or not. Clear, all of you? All those details are present or not, or if there is any confusion in the NFRs, means if at one place they have mentioned one response time and in another place for the same transaction they have mentioned a different response time. You will find these, guys. You will find these kind of issues. Clear, all of you? So what is your role? What is your job? Once you have got the NFRs, You go through those list of NFRs. You analyze those NFRs, okay, and highlight what are the issues. Clear? Now, how to do that? I'll explain you in the next session or in the future session, okay? Because we have a dedicated session for static testing of NFRs. Then you also need to place a request to the environment team for the performance test environment. Okay, you should place a request with them. Now, what kind of environment should be your performance test environment? That is very important, right? What kind of environment should that be? So your performance test environment should have the specifications as that of production, because your objective is that the application performance should be good in production, right? Because the end users are going to use the application in production. Now, if you have done the performance testing on a test environment on a lower specification and you have passed your test, that is not correct, because you have not tested it with production environment specification. The configuration, the hardware, everything should be close to production, guys. Now, many times what happens is they will tell you that no, we cannot provision this kind of environment. But still, in that case, you should ask for it. If they are not able to provide, you need to raise a risk into the project. Okay, you need to raise a risk to the project that the results, the performance test results which you will get in the lower environments, that might not correlate to production. And if we do not find any issues here, it doesn't mean that we'll not find them in production. Clear, all of you? So whenever you place any test environment, you should ask for an environment having the specifications as that of production environment for your performance test. Clear, all of you? So these are the different activities which you will do in a requirement gathering phase. Now, we discussed these activities, but everything looks, all that glitters is not gold, right? All that glitters is not gold. So we always have challenges also. So in requirement gathering phase also, you will have challenges. You will experience issues. So what are those challenges? I have tried to put some of them, but in real projects, you find more challenges. People will say that we do not have the details of production environment. We do not know which are the scenarios to be in scope. We do not have the NFRs. So these are the challenges, guys. So most frequent challenges are unavailability of NFRs, okay, or ambiguous NFRs or incomplete NFRs. Similarly, you do not have a finalized scope. So it is always a challenge to get a finalized list of NFRs as well as finalized scope. Test environment availability. As I told you, the performance test environment should be close to production. Clear, all of you? The performance test environment should be close to production, but it is again a challenge to get a test environment close to production, because there is cost associated with it. Many times your project manager will be reluctant to spend money on the performance test environment, because you will have ST environment, you will have development environment, you will have SIT environment, then you are again asking for a performance test environment, you will have UAT environment, pre-prod environment. So cost is associated with everything, right? Now, if cost is associated, your project manager will be a bit reluctant. So you have to provide the correct business justification, the proper business justification as performance test consultants. Because others, see, Functional testing, everyone understands that it is important, right? But performance testing is also important, and you need to make it understand if they are not understanding, because you are going to play the role of a performance test consultant in your projects. Okay. So the test environment availability, the performance test rather, okay, the performance test environment availability is also a challenge which is frequently seen in different projects, but we have to try to find a solution for that so that we do not, get issues. We have to overcome those issues. We have to find out solutions. So these are the different activities and some of the challenges which we face in the requirement gathering part, guys. Okay. I'll take a pause here, guys. Any queries, anyone? Any queries?
So, in a nutshell, can we say that all the functional end-to-end test cases and sanity test cases are PT candidates?
No. All the functional test cases cannot be PT candidates.
No, no, I'm saying only the sanity, right,
No,
which
no, no.
basically
No,
defines
not this.
the
No,
build
sanity.
acceptance criteria.
No, sanity defines that your applic means some of the features are working fine, right? That is just a,
No,
you
no,
know,
it defines the build acceptance, right, as uh, a site reliable engineer or DevOps, or if the build has
yeah,
like
understood.
how use, right,
Yeah, I understood your question. That means the testing team is ready to accept that build for testing. Okay. However,
right,
that is sanity. But for performance,
right.
whatever scenarios, let's say I'll give an example, a flight booking application. Okay.
Mm-hmm,
Now, when you do a flight booking application, do you think a sign up? So on that any application, there will be a sign up scenario. How many of
mm-hmm.
you think that people will go and do a sign up first, or people will go and search for the flights directly? People will go and
Okay, so
search
in
the
that
flights.
case, the sanity will, okay, so this sign up will not even be part of the sanity, to best of
Yes.
my knowledge in
Your
that case.
sanity, you will see that whether you are able to launch the application, right?
Right, and
But,
right.
but launching is not performance, right? So critical transaction, see end-to-end transaction. When what do you mean by transaction? A business flow means I am ending a transaction, right?
Mm-hmm,
Here all of you, like booking a flight, searching a flight, canceling a flight. These are scenarios, business flows, or transactions. Now out, so in an application, what are the features of an application, or what are the functionalities of the application? That will be long list, right? Now you cannot go and do the performance testing of all these scenarios. It is not advisable also, because all the scenarios are not going to be frequently used by all the customers, all the users. So whichever
mm-hmm.
scenarios in that application is going to be frequently used by the users in production, they should be part of performance testing. Okay. So you have to continuously communicate, you have to continuously engage with the business users, with the business analyst, to understand their perspective, that which all scenarios do they think that will be more used in production, or which are mission critical for their objective business flow. Okay. So they should be the candidates for performance system.
Okay.
Any other queries, anyone? Okay, so I'll take a pause here for today. We'll stop here and we'll resume tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you all for joining. Have a good night. Bye for now.